All right, brothers, let's talk about something that went viral for a reason. A woman records herself crying into her phone after a first date. Not because the guy was a creep, not because he said something offensive, not because the night was a disaster. The date was fine. The man was fine. And that was the problem. She says it plainly. She can't feel a spark anymore. She keeps sitting across from attractive, normal, put together men, and she feels nothing. No chemistry, no excitement, no pull, just flatness. Like she's showing up physically, but emotionally, she's not there. And when she says it, you can hear what's underneath it. It's not arrogance, it's not, I deserve better, it's exhaustion. She sounds like she's describing dating the way a man describes his fifth job interview that week: polite, drained, numb, forcing energy he doesn't have. Then she says something that a lot of people missed because they were too busy diagnosing her. She says she doesn't feel special anymore. She feels like she's just another girl in an endless lineup. She's not showing up magnetic. She's not showing up fun. She's showing up depleted. That right there is your first clue. This isn't just about attraction, it's about the state of her nervous system. Because chemistry isn't a decision, chemistry is a response. It's your body saying yes before your mind finishes explaining why. And if your body is burned out, overstimulated, numb, anxious, or defensive, you can sit across from a good person and still feel nothing. Not because they're not attractive, but because your internal system can't register attraction the way it used to. Now, here's what happens next: the internet reacts the way it always does. People diagnose her from a clip. She's depressed. She's on medication. She's emotionally unavailable. She's traumatized. She's spoiled by dating apps. She's chasing toxic men. And you know what? Parts of those guesses can be true, but the real answer is bigger than one explanation. Because this isn't one woman's problem, it's a pattern, and it's happening on a scale that people are afraid to talk about honestly. So let's unpack what's really going on under the surface. Not to shame women, not to get revenge, not to celebrate anyone's pain, but to understand the landscape clearly. Because as a man, clarity is power. If you don't understand what you're walking into, you'll waste years trying to do everything right with women who don't have the capacity to meet you where you are. And you'll blame yourself for a problem that isn't yours to fix. So here's the question we're answering today: why are so many women struggling to feel chemistry with good men? And what does that mean for you? Let's start with something most people don't want to admit. Modern dating is designed to exhaust the human psyche. Dating today is not a natural process. It's a high-speed market. It's constant evaluation, constant options, constant comparison, constant stimulation. It's not built for bonding, it's built for attention. And attention is the enemy of depth. The more your brain is trained to seek novelty, the harder it becomes to feel satisfaction from stability. That's not a moral judgment. That's basic conditioning. Your nervous system adapts to what you repeatedly feed it. If your dating life for years has been built on unpredictability, intensity, highs and lows, chasing, being chased, hot and cold dynamics, situationships, and the constant hunt for the next exciting experience, your brain learns to associate chemistry with emotional arousal, not connection, arousal. That's the first major piece. A lot of people today don't know the difference between chemistry and stimulation. Chemistry is often calm. It's curiosity. It's presence. It's a pull that grows. Stimulation is adrenaline. It's uncertainty. It's obsession. It's your mind running loops. In the beginning, stimulation feels like chemistry because it's intense. But intensity is not a reliable signal of compatibility. Sometimes it's just your nervous system reacting to unpredictability. When a woman spends years in a dating environment that trains her to chase stimulation, she can end up sitting across from a healthy man and feel bored. Not because he's boring, because her brain has been trained to need higher doses of novelty to feel anything at all. And that brings us to the second piece: choice overload. People underestimate what constant options do to the mind. When you believe you can always find someone better, your brain stays in evaluation mode. Evaluation mode is not bonding mode. Bonding requires settling into a person, letting them become familiar, letting the attraction deepen through repetition and trust. But evaluation mode keeps you scanning, comparing, judging, testing, wondering, holding back. That's why so many first dates feel like job interviews now. It's not romantic, it's transactional. And the more transactional dating becomes, the harder it is to feel anything real. Because genuine attraction is not produced by interrogation, it's produced by shared emotional experience. Now let's talk about the third piece, and this one is uncomfortable: emotional burnout. A lot of women in their late 20s and early 30s are emotionally fried, not because they're weak, because the lifestyle many were sold is not sustainable. A decade of keep it casual, don't settle, never be too available, date around, don't take it seriously, just have fun, live your best life sounds empowering in theory, but the nervous system doesn't care about slogans. If you repeatedly bond and detach, bond and detach, your brain adapts by becoming less sensitive. It protects itself. It starts treating connection as temporary by default. This is where people get the wrong idea and say, she can't pair bond anymore. That phrase gets thrown around carelessly, and I'm not going to use it the way the internet does. Here's the accurate version. The more you train your system to detach quickly, the less naturally it will attach deeply without time, safety, and consistency. Attachment isn't a switch you flip at 30 because you want marriage now. Attachment is a muscle. If you haven't trained it, if you've trained the opposite, it won't respond the way you want on command. That doesn't mean a woman is ruined. It means she has work to do, real internal work. And most people don't want to do that work because it requires facing choices without excuses. Now we add a fourth piece that most people ignore: anxiety, disguised as standards. A lot of women say, I just don't feel it, and they assume that means the guy isn't right. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes I don't feel it is a protective mechanism. When someone has been disappointed enough times, their brain learns to just shut down early. It's like emotional risk management. If you convince yourself there's no chemistry, you don't have to open up. You don't have to risk. You don't have to be vulnerable. You can walk away without feeling like you lost anything because you never let yourself want it. This is why some women chase emotionally unavailable men, because unavailable men keep the relationship at a distance where vulnerability feels safer. It sounds backwards, but it's common. A stable man requires you to show up as a stable woman. A chaotic man lets you stay chaotic. A stable man requires accountability. A chaotic man gives you distraction. So when a woman has unresolved emotional patterns, she may feel nothing with a stable man because stability demands presence, and presence forces her to feel what she's been avoiding. That's the fifth piece: internal emptiness. Many people are not actually bored by good men. They're bored by their own unprocessed life, their own lack of meaning, their own lack of identity beyond attention. When someone lives for years on stimulation, social media validation, nightlife attention, constant messaging, short term thrills, they can lose touch with deeper emotional hunger. Then they sit in front of a good man and realize the date doesn't distract them from themselves. And the lack of spark is not about him, it's about the absence of inner aliveness. Now, let's address a topic carefully because it's real, but it's also easy to weaponize. Mental health. Some women are dealing with depression, anxiety, trauma, hormonal issues, burnout, or medication side effects. These things can absolutely flatten emotional response. Anyone who's worked around mental health knows that. But here's the key: you cannot diagnose a woman from a 60-second clip. And as men, we need discipline here. We can acknowledge that emotional numbness can be linked to mental health struggles without turning it into a cheap insult or a lazy explanation for every woman who says she can't feel chemistry. Because the more important truth is this: even if mental health is part of her story, it does not become your job to rescue her. You are not her therapist. You are not her rehabilitation program. You are not obligated to sacrifice your life trying to bring the spark back for someone who doesn't even know who she is right now. Sympathy is fine. Self sacrifice is stupidity. Now, let's get the part that men need to understand for their own lives. Why stability can feel boring to some women. A healthy man often brings calm, consistency, predictable respect, emotional regulation. If a woman's system has been trained to equate love with tension, she may interpret calm as a lack of chemistry. She may interpret peace as there's no spark. But what she's really saying is, my nervous system doesn't know how to be attracted without chaos. And again, that doesn't make her evil. It makes her untrained, but you cannot build your life on untrained partners. Now, there's another layer to this, and it's social status exposure. A lot of women today have had access, sometimes briefly, to men far above their long-term relationship reality. Maybe it was a short fling with a high status guy. Maybe it was a situationship with a man who had looks, money, social influence, attention from other women. Maybe it was a chaotic relationship with an exciting man who never committed. And that experience becomes an emotional imprint. Not because he was good for her, because the intensity was high. And when you've tasted high intensity, normal connection can feel muted by comparison, especially if you never learned to separate intensity from compatibility. Some people call this alpha widow. That term is loaded and usually used to insult women, so I don't recommend using it in your content. But the underlying concept is real in a neutral sense. If someone's strongest romantic experiences were tied to high intensity, they may compare future partners to that intensity, even when that intensity was unhealthy. And men need to understand this, not to hate women, but to stop taking it personally. If a woman is emotionally imprinted on a fantasy level experience, you cannot compete with a ghost. You cannot compete with an edited highlight reel. You cannot compete with the version of a man that only existed when she was chasing him. That's why a lot of good men get confused. They show up respectful, successful, stable, and still get hit with, I just don't feel it. And they start thinking, what's wrong with me? Sometimes nothing is wrong with you. Sometimes you're simply the wrong match for her current psychological conditioning. Now let's zoom out. What does this mean for men? Because men watching this want something practical, not just analysis. Here's what it means. In the modern dating market, being a good man is not enough. You must be a discerning man. Your greatest advantage is not how much you can give. It's how well you can choose. Because there are women who are emotionally healthy capable of bonding, and ready for real partnership. And there are women who are burned out, overstimulated, addicted to novelty, unresolved, and unable to feel real attraction and peace. If you don't learn to tell the difference early, you will waste years. So, how do you tell the difference? You don't do it by interrogating her about body count or grilling her about her past. That's insecure, and it makes you sound like a man who has no leverage. You do it by observing patterns. Here are the signs a woman can connect. 1. She has the consistency in her life, not perfection. Consistency, her routines, her friendships, her work ethic, her health, her emotional habits. A woman who can't keep her own life stable usually can't build a stable relationship. 2. She has accountability. When she's wrong, can she admit it? When there's conflict, does she escalate or resolve? When she's emotional, does she weaponize it or communicate? 3. She can sit in peace without creating chaos. This is huge. Can she enjoy a calm day with you without needing stimulation? Can she appreciate stability without interpreting it as boredom? 4. She respects boundaries. If you say no, does she punish you? If you take time, does she spiral? If you don't respond immediately, does she try to regain control? 5. Her attraction grows with consistency. This is the most important one. Healthy attraction often deepens over time. It doesn't require constant drama to stay alive. Now, if you see the opposite patterns, constant need for novelty, constant comparison, constant dissatisfaction, inability to enjoy calm, emotional tests, chaos disguised as passion, take it seriously. Because what you're looking at is not a woman who needs more love. It's a woman whose nervous system is conditioned to chaos. And you cannot love someone out of a conditioning that they refuse to confront. So what do? You build yourself into a man with options, not to play women, not to become arrogant, not to be a player. Options give you the ability to walk away without fear. And fear is what traps men in bad dynamics. Men without options tolerate nonsense. Men with options don't. And how do you get options? Not by begging the market to be fair. You build your pillars, your health, your income, your social competence, your emotional discipline, your purpose, your standards. Because a man with a mission doesn't get swallowed by dating culture. He invites women into his life. He doesn't rearrange his life around their moods. And that's the key to winning in the modern era. You don't chase connection like it's oxygen. You build a life so full and structured that only a woman with real value can fit into it without disrupting your peace. And when you do that, two things happen. First, you stop being emotionally manipulated because you don't need to force outcomes. Second, you naturally attract women who are tired of the chaos and want stability because your stability is real, not performative. Now, we end with the truth that most men need to hear. Some women are genuinely struggling to feel the spark because their internal system is fried. That is real. But it is not your job to fix them. Your job is to choose well. Your job is to protect your peace. Your job is to build the kind of life where the wrong woman can't ruin you. And when you sit across from a woman, like the one in that viral clip, depleted, numb, confused, you don't mock her. You don't hate her. You simply recognize she is not ready. And a man who respects himself does not build a future with someone who is not ready. He doesn't argue her into readiness. He doesn't love her into readiness. He doesn't sacrifice his life trying to be the spark she lost. He keeps moving because the modern world is full of noise, full of stimulation, full of people who are emotionally exhausted but still demanding connection. The man who wins is the man who stays grounded, builds strength, and chooses with clarity. If this hit home, comment the keyword spark gone. And if you're here to build yourself into the kind of man who doesn't beg for connection, but earns it through standards and stability, subscribe.